Rain hits the clay roof like a drum when Amina stands on the low wall of the compound, the old wooden comb clutched in one small hand. The comb is dark with oil and time, a carved little bird on the handle, and it smells faintly of palm oil and her mother's soap. Night is thick with heat and the smell of wet earth. Frogs call like hand drums in the distance, and a dog barks twice, anxious. Amina listens for Adjoa's slippers on the mud path below. Her stepmother's feet make a slow, certain sound, and she knows that if Adjoa finds the comb tied under Amina's shirt, there is no stopping Wednesday's shame. Rain slicks the wall, her bare toes find a nick in the clay. The quick choice arrives like a thunder crack. Jump down and fetch the water the neighbors sell, or stay and let Adjoa turn the comb into a coin. She leaps, heart against ribs, and the comb thuds and lives on in her palm, a small, heavy promise. Daylight in Kumasi tastes of roasted yam and dust as Amina walks the market lane with a tray of fresh fish balanced on her head, beads of sweat cooling on her neck. The market is loud with voices, spoons, the metallic clink of scales, and the scent of smoked fish makes her teeth ache with hunger. She moves like a shadow between legs, avoiding the fat shoppers who look away when she reaches, and when a customer pushes, she keeps the tray steady because the fish are the week's bread. Adjoa meets her in the center of the market and taps the comb with a ringed finger, a small game of cruelty that everyone sees. "Keep that cloth for sweeping," Adjoa tells the women's circle, her voice soft and perfect like a polished stone. The women titter and look down at Amina's bare feet. Inside, Amina folds the comb into the cloth at her waist so that the bird hides from eyes that do not deserve to see it. At the kraal behind the market, schoolchildren run with clean uniforms and swollen satchels. The wooden fence around the school sounds like a laughter gate. Amina watches them from the veranda where she washes fish heads and hears the teacher's voice chopping math like yam. When she was younger, the school bell used to call her like a drum that made the stories of numbers seem true. Adjoa sold the satchel and said school is for the chosen. The first obstacle stands raw and blunt. No more books, only market days and cold nights. Amina keeps the comb, thinking of her mother combing her hair slow and humming a song about rivers that move with patience. The comb is a secret small as a seed, but heavy as a wish. Adjoa stacks obstacles like bricks. She hires Amina out to the big woman of the quarter to wash shining pots and clean marble floors, while Selina, the stepdaughter, learns to say the right names and sits under a white umbrella at the private school. Adjoa's laughter smells of palm oil and pride when she tells visitors, "My girl will marry well. All we need is a good road." She begins to shape Selina like a dress, pressing a future into the fabric. Amina gets a cracked pot for sleeping and a place at the back door of the house where smells of stew are put away for guests. When Amina asks to go back to learning, Adjoa says, "What will you learn, child? How to be poor better." And the word poor lands like a stone. The second obstacle comes fast in the dry season, a run on money. The neighborhood whispers about a man in the city with a name like Thunder, Kofi Mensah, who is building a big thing in Accra and will bring the world with him. He is called a billionaire, a word that falls from people like coins. The radio plays his name for 3 days like music. Adjoa sees the name and imagines a new house, a roof that does not drip, a dress for Selina heavier than any cloth they have touched. She makes plans that catch the sunlight. Amina hears of the wedding only in passing, in the way women fold stories into tea leaves. She hears of a gala in Accra, tents like white moons, and a chance for one child from the village to be given help. Adjoa's mouth moves with a map of the future, and the comb tightens in Amina's hand. On market morning, when the air is thick with smoke and the women trade gossip like fish, Adjoa takes the comb. She does not ask. She takes. She says the comb will make more money than any small job, that a good dress costs a small thing and the dress will lift Selina, and they will take a seat with the rich. Amina fights like a bird with a broken wing. She hides behind the maize sacks, slips her hand toward the comb, and tries to wrest it back. The third obstacle is physical and loud. Adjoa slaps her, a sharp thing that smells of regret, and sends Amina outside with no supper. The comb leaves the house like an exile. Adjoa wraps it in a city coin and goes to Accra with Selina, wearing a new bluff like a coat. Amina is left with the taste of glass under her tongue and a choice that grows like a thorn bush. Do nothing and watch the comb become a story of someone else's hands, or go chasing after the promise of a future she cannot name. She takes the market road toward the main highway where buses cough and honk like sleepy lions, and Jojo, a driver of a little green van, who knows her by name and owes her a small kindness for scrubbed mirrors, sees the comb fall from Adjoa's bag as they load trunk luggage at the station. Jojo catches it up in the air and presses it to his chest because the wooden bird reminds him of his own sister's toy. He tells Amina wordlessly, "Come," and the two of them climb into the van like two small passengers of fate. The fourth obstacle is the city itself. Accra is a river of metal and neon and smells of burnt jollof. Shadows move quick and sharp between glass doors. Jojo drops Amina at the hotel where the wedding will be. He knows the doorman from many nights and slips her inside like a cat. Amina hides in a storeroom, breathing varnish and flowers and the tired perfume of white dresses. Her hands are small and clever. She finds a broom and becomes the quiet worker who makes rooms shine before the wedding. She watches Selina from the kitchen door. Selina's smile is like a knife wrapped in silk, bright and dangerous. The fifth obstacle is proximity, seeing the thing you want and being told to stand lower and sweep nearer the dust. Kofi Mensah is a man who moves like a new wind. He comes into the hall late and sits at a long table that shines like a river of coins. His tie is perfect, his laugh measured, and his face is framed by a camera that wants to make him a god. The wedding parties are a festival for a city that loves spectacle, and Amina sees Kofi in a quiet moment by the flowers, not yet heavy with photographers. He speaks with an old man about giving to the children of rural towns, and the old man's voice is small and tired. Kofi slips from the circle and walks into the storeroom to escape microphones, and Amina, hiding, drops a bucket. The sound is sharp. It starts like a gunshot in her chest. She looks up and sees Kofi's shoes, the rolled cuffs of his suit like a blade in the dim. The midpoint arrives like lightning framed against the hotel glass. In the storeroom, the comb falls from Amina's apron with the clack of a small drum. Kofi looks down, and his face changes. The line of his mouth goes soft and then pulled into something else, a map of memory. He reaches forward and lifts the comb. The carved bird is the same mark that sits on the back of an old photograph on his desk, a photograph of a woman who once sang lullabies about river stones when Kofi was a boy. He holds the comb like a relic and asks Amina, "Where did you get this?" The flip happens. This small wooden bird, which was a secret shame, becomes a key. Kofi's voice says a name Amina hears like a bell, Ama Mensah, her mother. The story that Adjoa told for power begins to fall apart like a paper hat in rain. The crowd at the wedding senses a new story. Kofi asks Amina to come forward. She stands with the broom in hand, a small figure in the great white room, while the orchestra hushes like a forest holding its breath. He talks about the photograph on his desk and the woman who left a child in a distant town and then vanished. He says the comb is the same he kept when his sister Amma left. The audience leans in like a single shape. Adjoa rises on Selina's side with a face that is smooth as fish scale and offers a picture 100 times retouched, a tale of adoption and good care. The twist flips meaning again when Nana Ya, a thin midwife who sits at the back of the crowd with a basket of beads, stands and walks forward. Her steps are slow and firm, She remembers the cry of a newborn in a night of rain, the same night a woman named Amma sang about river stones. She remembers wrapping the child in a cloth and giving a comb made in a far village to the mother. Her witness is a truth shaped by time. The sixth obstacle is Adjoa's fury. She raises a voice that cuts like a machete and calls Amina a thief, claims she made that comb, claims Amina is a liar. Selina begins to cry, the kind of practice cry that wins sympathy and lights cameras. Many in the hall turn away from the small broom girl and toward the shining wedding, and for a moment the world sharpens into two colors, the white of silk and the brown of mud. Kofi asks no cameras to stop but looks at Amina with eyes that hunger for a story solved. Nana Ya brings out an old ledger, a small thing with frayed covers, and in it is the name Ama Mensa, written once, in a shaky ink, with a note of a midwife's fee. The ledger smells like smoke and the earth. It is the map that leads home. But the world resists easy truth. Adjoa brings forward a woman from town who says she sold a comb to the pawn shop 2 nights ago and shows a receipt. The city police stand by, ready to fold the small story into law. Amina's world is a tight fist, and the comb rests inside. At 70%, the crisis arrives in a single sharp moment, like a cut. A thunderstorm comes like a curtain through the hotel windows. Lightning throws the gold of the chandeliers into ghosts. A bully named Yaw, a cousin of Selina's who has a history of small cruelties, hauls Amina off the stage and shoves her into a back room because Adjoa screams that the girl is a thief who broke the peace on the wedding day. Jojo, the driver, steps between the men and gets shoved so hard his head hits the stone and blood finds his lip. The room is sodden with red and the smell of iron. Amina reaches for Jojo's hand and the hotel security moves in like a wall. She feels Jojo's breath and knows he is hurt because her presence makes trouble. The painful loss is not of gold, but of movement. Jojo falls into a stupor in a hospital ward with a bandage layered like a crown, and Amina faces a choice that grinds her to the bone. The hard choice stretches thin before her. She can shout the whole truth now, take the ledger and Nana Ya's word and the comb, and make Adjoa answer in public, but Jojo lies bleeding, and she is the cause. If she shouts, she'll drag Jojo into a fight, not of his making, and she will lose the only person who showed her quiet kindness. Or she can stay silent to protect Jojo, let Adjoa keep her power and say nothing, choose the small mercy for a friend over the big justice. Amina's hands shake like leaves. The comb in her pocket grows hot. She remembers her mother's song about rivers moving with patience and chooses the slow way. She goes to the hospital, smoothing her voice and tying a handkerchief for Jojo. The loss is deep. The chance to claim family in the brilliant hall melts like a sugar sculpture. The world seems to swallow the comb's promise into shadows. But the choice to protect Jojo does not kill justice. It opens a different wound and a different door. Jojo wakes with a stubborn look in his eyes and tells the nurse that Amina saved him from a bigger stone, that she is kind and does not deserve the shame. The nurse believes and speaks to a journalist who saw the commotion at the hotel. The journalist, hungry for a story with edges, looks beyond the staged pictures of dresses and gold and finds Nana Ya and the ledger and the pawn shop receipt. The journalist comes to the hospital and writes a column that holds the city's attention. A comb, a ledger, and a girl's hush. The story runs like a lantern through Accra. People who work in small offices, who eat in concrete courtyards, read it and pass the paper along. The multiple climaxes surge now like a river breaking a dam. First, the spectacle is returned to the hotel when the wedding pauses not for music but for questions. Kofi calls for calm and asks the cameras to show restraint. He tells the bride to wait while truth moves. The guests breathe like a tide. Kofi is no longer only a figure under lights. He becomes a man who must decide between the comfortable story of a perfect wedding and the messy truth. He chooses truth. He asks Adjoa to explain the chain of events, and she starts with the smooth lines of practiced lies. Then her voice breaks when Nanaya speaks of the night of rain and the thin woman who called herself Ama Mensa. The unexpected witness is the bus driver from the far village who comes forward with bruised hands and an old song that Ama used to sing on his bus route. He remembers giving the woman a seat and a small comb from his wife's stall. His memory is a string that pulls the whole ragged net. In the center of the hall, Selina hears the truth and sees the cameras move like birds. She drops her practiced smile and tries to run, but people block the doors. The crowd is a sea of faces lit by phone screens like fish eyes. The city is watching, and the city's law feels the pressure of the watching. Adjoa tries to slice the ledger with fire. She steals toward the book. But a young lawyer at the wedding, a cousin of Kofi's, takes the ledger and reads the spidery names aloud. The reading is sharp. It reads like medicine. The names map Amina to Ama Mensa by a small thread of ink that no amount of lying can dissolve. Adjoa cannot fake the handwriting of a midwife who writes with a heart. The truth is made of small, stubborn things. Stripped of power, Adjoa loses what she most wanted: the place at the head table, the applause, the glitter. The aunties who lined her with praise like beads turn away. Her face becomes a map of soft shame. The hotel security finally removes her gently but firmly, and the cameras turn to catch the look of a woman who chose a dress over a girl. Selina, standing robed in borrowed gold, sees the fast emptying of her future and begins to cry, this time not of acting. Kofi kneels in front of Amina, not as a god, but as a man who makes choices in front of people. He says he will help her find her family, that the comb is a story's hinge, and asks Amina if she will come to his office to look through records. Amina says yes, and the whole crowd exhales like a held breath. The fall that follows is human and quiet and not easy. Adjoa is not taken to prison, but she is forced to open her accounts and to return what she can. The village elders, who once bowed to her because she slipped the right coins into their pockets, now look at her with a flat stare. The law takes an interest, slow and careful, and says that guardians who hide children for gain will be watched. Adjoa loses her job as the community treasurer, a thin job that paid dinners and gave her voice at meetings. The punishment is not a breaking, but an unthreading, power gone, eyes turned away, the way people's glances make a new map of life. Selina is sent to live with an aunt in town to learn new work. She has to find a future without a throne. Meanwhile, Kofi opens his office records and finds the line of paper that ties Ama Mensa to his family's house, a note that says the woman worked for his mother until she left with a child in her arms one night. The reason is not a tidy crime. It is a tangle of poverty, young love, and a promise that faded in the city. Kofi reaches into a drawer and finds an old locket with a picture of Ama and a small carved bird burned into the wood. The chain of events ties Amina into his family not as a claim to money alone, but as a long-needed answer to a man's quiet question about a sister who left. The discovery is tender. It makes a map of a family that has gaps and doors. Kofi offers Amina a chance to learn, to sit with lawyers and elders and make a clean path forward. Amina faces one last painful test. The world will say she must choose between growing into wealth with careful steps or holding tight to the small village life where names stay like familiar beatings. She remembers Jojo's head in her lap and Nanaya's soft hand. She decides to ask for something neither side expects, a place for her village to learn. She asks Kofi to help build a small school in their town and to fund a program for girls who cannot go to school because of hunger and fear. She asks for the comb not as a piece of gold but as a symbol hung in the new school where children will see a small bird and know someone from their town belongs in the world. The decision is brave because it asks wealth to touch the poor like a hand extended rather than a show of power. The multi-climax continues when the city comes to celebrate the school's foundation 6 weeks later. Kofi stands with officials and the cameras come again, but this time they shine on a different thing. A long table with books and a playground where children run with the dust up to their shoes. The spectacle is not for one wedding but for many small futures. Adjoa watches from a distance where the elders let her stand, and she is quiet. Nana Ya pins a small carved bird to the school door, and Jojo, who healed in the hospital with patients, drives a van that brings children from distant hamlets to the gate. The unexpected witness, the bus driver, the midwife, the lawyer, the nurse, each take a turn speaking and telling the city a truth about small people doing big things. The cameras film children learning to read under an open blue sky, and the city sees the beauty of steady work rather than glitter. Adjoa loses the last of her proud posture when the village gathers and chooses a new leader for the cooperative. She sees the elders pick someone who is kind and honest. Selena, quiet now and slow with learning, helps at the table where girls sew uniforms for the school. She learns how to thread a needle by the light of a kerosene lamp, and each tiny stitch is a lesson in not taking the easy path. For Amina, the comb is hung in the school's window, catching sun and throwing a small bird-shaped shadow on the floor where children sit. Every day it moves with the light like a small pulse. The final months after the wedding are not a sudden change but a small revolution. Kofi funds scholarships and a book room in Kumasi, and once a week he rides the dusty road in a tro-tro that smells of rubber and hopes to sit with children and ask their names. He tells stories of his sister Amma, and he listens when Amina speaks of rivers that move with patience. Amina studies in the afternoons with chosen teachers, learns the work of law and rights and how to speak for others, and she keeps the comb in a small box by her bed like a map of the roads she has crossed. Jojo teaches the children how to fix a van. Nana Ya sits with new mothers and shows them ways to wrap babies warmly. The village grows like a slow tree, ring by ring. 6 months later, the school stands where the old well used to fill with stubborn mud. Laughter wraps the building like a garment, and the carved bird comb hangs above the doorway, so sunlight makes it a small fire. Amina walks the yard in the morning, hands in a small book bag, and she watches a girl with Selena's smile try on a borrowed uniform. Adjoa sells roasted corn near the market, and while she watches the school's children, her face is a map of small regrets and new lines of work, hands busy but quieter. Jojo mends a bicycle for the head teacher and leans to his kindness the way wood leans into glue. Kofi sits on the school's bench sometimes and listens to the children name the rivers that line their dreams. The comb is not gold, it is the small bird that keeps flying home, a symbol of what truth and care can build when held steady by many hands. Kindness and truth shine brighter than any crown. Do you agree? If this moved you, please like and share, and tell us in the comments how truth changed someone you love. We read every story. The interval beat comes fast like a sudden rain in a dry season. A private press clip pops up on Amina's phone at the hospital, a slick voiceover speaking of a hidden billionaire who has watched the village's pain from a distance and has decided that enough quiet mercy has waited long enough, that a school must rise where fear once held hands, that Amma Mensa's daughter will be its living symbol, and the name Amina is spoken with a tone that makes the air feel lighter, even as a nurse calls her to Jojo's ward door. The clip ends with a quick flash of a logo she has never seen before, a small bird carved in wood like the one on the comb, and the caption asks, in bold, who will lead the new wave of change? Who will claim the future for those who never had a chair at the table? And Amina's breath catches because now the world outside the hospital has a map, a path, and a clock that will not stop ticking toward a deadline she did not choose but must meet. She asks herself who this shadowy patron truly is. what price the village must pay to walk into daylight, and whether she, a girl who learned to sweep floors and cradle a fish's memory, can bear the weight of a call that sounds like justice and also sounds like a brand new beginning. The answer begins as the nurse hands her Jojo's rolled bandage and says there is a meeting tonight in Kumasi where promises will be tested, and the implied question is urgent. Will Amina go to that meeting or stay in the hospital and let the city's appetite for spectacle fade back into rumor? And if she goes, what proof will she carry that can carry the weight of a real change without breaking Jojo again or letting Adjoa slip away into quiet wealth and old lies? The interval marker has become a door. On the ride back to Kumasi, she sits with a blanket tucked around her shoulders, the city sliding past in a smear of tin roofs, Danfo horns, and the hiss of the road's heat, and in that moment she understands that the billionaire's choice is not a gift alone, but a test. Will she help build a future that does not erase the past, or will she watch the money erase the people who built the village's heart in the first place? The twist's first consequence lands when the road opens into a dawn light over the market square, where the same women who once whispered over the comb now whisper about the clip and about a new order of accountability, and the crowd's eyes drift toward a small stage gleaming with new glass and wood, a stage that will host the signing of a foundation charter and the first scholarships. And Amina steps onto the bus of responsibility with Jojo's hand still like a soft anchor in hers. Her voice, when she speaks, is careful but clear, and she says, "If this is real, then let us be real too." And the words are chosen not just to claim a future, but to promise a future that will not forget the village's long night, the rain on zinc roofs, the smell of palm oil in Adjoa's kitchen, the sound of the market's trading hands, the creak of a well's rope, or the way a child's foot finds the old comb's carved bird in the dust and believes it again. The second consequence lands in the same breath as the beginning of the new, because the billionaire's identity, though hidden still in the public eye, is revealed by a quiet act. Kofi Mensah, the man who wore the smile of a man who had never forgotten poverty's price, steps into the hospital room with a calm that makes the sterile walls feel like a village square, and he does not come as judge but as witness and partner, laying down the charter papers with a pencil that has a weight in it, and he says to Amina, in a voice that sounds like a father's and a brother's at once, that the foundation will be led by someone who has learned what it means to be hungry and to be heard, and he asks her to come to his office that afternoon to comb through the records with him, to trace Ama Mensah's footsteps through the village's memories, and to see the long line that leads to this moment. And he adds softly, "You will not walk alone," which makes her mouth tilt into a cautious smile, because the village's eyes are on her now as surely as they ever were on Adjoa's twice-baked plan, and she knows the price of being seen in a world that loves a spectacle but is learning to love truth more. The period of fevered news and public promises becomes a slower, steadier rhythm, as if someone has taught the city to breathe again. The hotel's scandal dissolves into a lesson about accountability. The ledger's frayed edges are placed into a transparent safe, and the bus driver's testimony and Nana Ya's old knowledge become part of a living map that the lawyers and elders consult like scripture, so that the tale of a comb and a ledger does not end in shame, but becomes a tool for building a learning life for the children who walk in from the village every morning with dust on their shoes and the birds' shadows leaping across their faces. Amina walks with Kofi through a corridor of glass and light, where the morning sun makes the dust look like gold and the air tastes of cinnamon and rain, and he says, "You are not the end of the story, but the doorway." And when he adds that the Foundation's first project will be a small school at the foot of the old Wells Hill, with a library of donated books and a room for girls who need privacy to study, she feels the comb's carved bird tapping softly in the pocket of her dress, a heartbeat against a quiet fear that a girl from a market street could not possibly be the leader of a promise. And she answers that she will not only lead but teach, not only earn but give, not only win, but widen the path for others to walk beside her. And the city seems to lean closer, listening, as if the wall of wealth and the wall of poverty can finally hear one another's names in the same breath. The turning point arrives when the Foundation's charter is signed. Adjoa's old leadership is publicly reassembled as a cautionary tale rather than a crown. Selena steps into the role of a student who is allowed to dream in borrowed clothes and then to sew her own future stitch by stitch. Jojo returns in a hospital gown that has a new badge of honor and an older laugh. The nurse's clipboard now bears a note with his handwriting that says he will bring the first class to the school's gate on the day it opens, and Nana Ya's hands, pressed into a grandmother's palm, pass on to Amina the secret of small acts that change big things. The video's second life is a public one, a televised ceremony not of a wedding, but of a community's rebirth, with Kofi and Amina standing side by side under a banner that reads, "A future built with truth," and the crowd's cheer is not a celebration of wealth, but a chorus for justice. As the cameras catch the moment, a girl whose name is spoken softly by a teacher as a prayer steps forward to lead a circle of girls in a reading aloud of poems about rivers that move with patience. The applause is a wave that washes over the village, over Adjoa's empty chair, over the market stalls and the hospital beds, and over the comb hung now in the school doorway like a small, bright flame that makes the smiling face of a child look exactly like the carved bird shadow in the floor, so that every child who passes through the door learns that strength can rise from kindness, that wealth must bend to care, that history can be corrected with a single honest act, and that the future's design is not drawn by one man's pen, but by a chorus of hands that include a driver, a midwife, a nurse, a lawyer, a teacher, a girl with Selena's courage, and a boy with a broken lip who learns to mend wheels and lives with a new pride in how he helps his village become a place where a comb is never just wood but a doorway, where a ledger is never just ink but a map, where the word poor is spoken as a fact to be changed, not a verdict to be accepted. And as the sun climbs higher and the school doors swing wide each morning, the comb's little bird catches the light and sketches a fleeting bird shadow on the floor where children sit. Amina lingers at the gate, watching the first class spill out into the yard like a flock of bright feathers, hearing Jojo's quiet pronunciation of their names, feeling Kofi's hand on her shoulder, smelling the fresh ink of the charter, tasting the sharp truth that wealth, when shared with patience and integrity, can become a bridge rather than a wall. And she thinks of her mother's song about rivers moving with patience and knows the river's current is now carrying not just a girl out of poverty, but a village toward a future it can finally claim for itself. So when the school bell rings and the crowd breaks into soft laughter, and the birds in the carved bird's shadow lift into the light, she feels a single answer rising inside her, like a promise fulfilled. This is the work that will outlive the wedding, outlive every gossip, outlive even the fear that once kept her from chasing the comb's truth, because kindness and truth have the strength to bend the day toward mercy, and now the last visible thread from the interval's shock has become the first line of a new chapter, with the opening page still warm and bright, the community's long night finally over, and a future that belongs to every child who learns to read under the sun's patient glare.